A pair of jumper cables walks into a bar. The bartender says, "You can stay, but don't start anything." An atom walks into a bar and asks the bartender if he's seen his missing electron. "Are you sure she's missing?" asks the bartender. "I'm positive," replies the atom. Every day, a doctor would go to the same bar and order a chestnut daiquiri. One day, the bartender ran out of chestnut and used hickory instead. The doctor came in, sipped it, and exclaimed, "EW. What is this?" The bartender replied, "That's a hickory daiquiri, doc." So a snake walks into a bar. The bartender says, "How'd you do that?" A Mobius strip walks into a bar crying. The bartender says, "What's wrong, buddy?" The Mobius strip replies, "Oh, where do I even begin?" A horse walks into a bar. The bartender says, "You are in here a lot. Do you think you have a drinking problem?" The horse says, "I don't think so," then disappears into nothing. This is the point in time when all the philosophy students in the audience begin to giggle, as they are familiar with the philosophical proposition of cogito ergo sum, where I think, therefore, I am. The classic philosophy put forward by René Descartes, but to explain the concept beforehand would be putting Descartes before the horse. Two bacteria walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Sorry, but we don't serve bacteria here." To which the bacteria reply with, "But we work here, we're staff." A ham sandwich walks into a bar and orders a beer. The bartender says, "We don't serve food here." A neutron walks into a bar and asks how much for a drink. The bartender says, "For you, no charge." On New Year's Eve, Marilyn stood up in the local pub and said that it was time to get ready. At the stroke of midnight, she wanted every husband to be standing next to the one person who made his life worth living. As the clock struck, the bartender was almost crushed to death. A man walks into a bar with a piece of asphalt. The man says to the bartender, "One for me, and one for the road." COVID, HIV, and the flu walks into a bar. Bartender says, "What is this, some kind of sick joke?" A really bad impressionist walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Why the wrong face?" More dad humor awaits right after this short break. A weasel walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Wow, I've never served a weasel before. What can I get you?" Pop goes the weasel. A guy walks into a bar and orders a beer. Soon he hears a voice, "Nice tie." But no other customers are around. A few minutes later, "Looks like you've been working out." So he asks the bartender, "What's up?" The bartender says, "It's the peanuts. They're complimentary." A clay pot walks into a bar and says, "Give me a whiskey and make it a double." Bartender asks, "Had a rough day?" Clay pot replies, "Yeah, I just got fired." A man walks into a bar with a small newt on his shoulder. The bartender said, "What an interesting pet. What's his name?" "Tiny," the man replied. The bartender said, "That's an odd name. Why did you call him Tiny?" "Because he's my newt." A king and queen walk into a bar. The bartender says, "Sorry, you're not 21. A man walks into a bar and sees a steak hanging from the ceiling. He asks the bartender, "Why is there a piece of steak hanging from the ceiling?" The bartender replies, "If somebody jumps and manages to hit the steak, all drinks will be free for the entire night. However, if somebody tries and misses, they will have to buy drinks for everybody else for the entire night. Would you like to try?" The man thinks about it and replies, "No thanks, the stakes are too high." A raisin, a peanut, and an oat sit down and order a drink. Bartender says, "What do you think this is? A granola bar?" A man holding a big crocodile walks into a bar. He asks, "Do you serve lawyers here?" The bartender replies, "We sure do." "Good," says the man, "give me a beer, and I'll have a lawyer for my crocodile, please." A man walks into a bar. The bartender asks, "What do you want?" The man replies, "Oh, just some fruit punch." The bartender sighs and shakes his head. "If you want punch, you're gonna have to wait in line." The man looks around, but there is no punch line. A horse walks into a bar. The bartender says, "Why the long?" When suddenly the horse cuts him off. "I've heard that a million times. Why the long face? Haha. I hear that everywhere I go." "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that," says the bartender. "Other than that, how's your life?" The horse responds with, "Stable." A rope walks into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "Get out. We don't serve rope in here." So the rope goes out, cuts itself in two before tying the two sections together. It then pulls out a comb and combs its ends. The rope then walks back into the bar. The bartender says, "Hey, aren't you the rope that I just threw out?" The rope replied, "No, I'm afraid not." I once asked for a rum and Coke, and the bartender said, "Is Pepsi okay?" I said, "No, I definitely prefer rum." A screwdriver walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Hey, we have a drink named after you." To which the screwdriver replies, "You have a drink named Philip?" The bartender says, "We don't serve time travelers in here." A time traveler walks into a bar. A termite walks into a bar. "Is the bartender here?" I'm Montgomery Jones. We're on a mission to spread the laughs and groans far and wide, so please do us a favor and share just one of these jokes with your family and friends today. Thanks. Looking for more dad joke humor to share? Then subscribe to our new weekly email newsletter. It's our weekly roundup of the best dad jokes, memes, and humor for you to enjoy. Spread the laughs and groans and sign up today. Check the sign up link in the show notes page or visit dailydadjokespodcast.com. The Daily Dad Jokes Podcast is produced by Classic Studios. See the show notes page for social media links and joke credits. This show was recorded in front of a canned studio audience.